were all these wires and gadgets out on the desk. Roger was tinkering. You go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm building a drum machine.
All the drum samples were my own drums. You had to be a drummer to sample drum sounds in those days. I got really, really good at it, and I really loved it. And it's just a tool. It's another way to make music.
Don't come around here no more.
Digital was in its infancy. In the 80s, everybody was trying to be state-of-the-art. People were saying you only have 24 faders, and we want 32, 64, we want 72. Whoop-de-doo.
Keith Olsen left Sound City and built a studio right next door. That was the weirdest thing, you know. You go in a parking lot, there'd be Keith Olsen.
I did this thing with Rick Springfield. I told Joe Gottfried, I want you to build me a studio, and I will give you the specs and I'll put in the gear.
He told me one day, you gotta see the studio I built, you know. So I go in and he's got a board with one fader. And I said, well, what do you do with that? He goes, that's all I need. You know, it's all in the computer. He goes, what do you hear what I'm doing, you know? And I thought, well, I don't give a fuck. I want some shit to play with, you know? I want to turn knobs, and I can't trust this.
Keith Olsen clearly had a lot to do with making Sound City what it is, but then if you went to his studio next door, it was nothing like Sound City. It was the precursor to the digital studio.
That was an interesting time in music where sequencers were starting to come out. Now you can record audio into the computer. Wow. We could manipulate it in ways we never could have done on tape before, and then you can think about stuff in different ways.
It was a whole new world.
Here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known, but here I go again.
In the 80s, everything was a lot more digital. Things started to get more processed.
Everything started sounding really overproduced with a cannon shot snare.
Here I go.
Sound City couldn't keep up. Joe was way over his head, and not just with the studio.
At that time, we made a lot of mistakes. We spent a lot of money chasing other acts. And then one day, Rick decided he wanted to go with a younger, better manager, in his opinion.
I was kind of talked into switching managers, and I didn't do it very well.
It was supposed to be that Joe was like Colonel Parker and Rick was Elvis, you know? That's the way we all thought about it, you know?
Rick Springfield made some money for Joe and stuff, but Joe became like a second father to him. Rick was his baby.
And this guy talked me into, you know, dumping Joe, and there was a lot of untruths told, you know.
Joe was completely shattered when it happened. It shattered me too, but not personal like it did him.
It was a really bad day for him, you know. That happened, and drum machines and all that stuff, and, you know, synthesizers and stuff like that started taking over. It just got a little haywire.
By the late 80s, Sound City, it just couldn't compete.
This was a time when studios got nicer and nicer. Like, some studios had hot tubs. Like, at Sound City, you just wanted to work and get the hell out of there. It was not a place you wanted to spend time. And it seemed like it would have been so easy to clean it up, but just no one took it upon themselves to do that.
I got up after 9 years at Sound City, $29,000 for the year. No health insurance. Joe took it away, couldn't afford it. And then when Joe wouldn't give me my second week vacation, that's when I said, I'm leaving.
By the time I got to Sound City, it was really dying. We had a tech who was dealing drugs, receptionist who wanted to hang out with Keith Olsen more than be at the studio. So I got rid of her. I remember Keith telling me I was wasting my time and the studio would be closed in 6 months. Told him to go fuck himself and get out. I took the last $200 out of my checking account and bought paint, and we painted the walls. Sound City was dead. It was dead.
To be honest, I don't even remember how the fuck we picked Sound City.
It's a gritty place, but we were used to living on the edge, so it's just like, it was roomy, it was comfortable.
I think it was like $600 a day. 16 days in the studio, and then accommodations. I think maybe $60K was the budget for the whole record.
We had these songs, and we busted them out. We had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do.
As much as we loved noise and we loved crazy-ass punk rock shit, we wanted to be a good band. We loved the Beatles.
One of the craziest songs that we recorded was Lithium. For whatever reason, the band and Dave kept speeding up. Not subtly, but a lot. It would start out at a certain tempo and then keep going faster and faster, racing along, basically. I said, Dave, have you ever played with a click track before?
My heart just went, I just felt like someone had stabbed me in the fucking brain. When you're a drummer, you don't want anyone to ask you to play to a click track, you know. That human feel is what gives a player their personality.
Some drummers don't really know how to play to something that's keeping them in line, like a click track.
I'm so happy 'cause today.
Lo and behold, the first take, man, he locked in like he'd played to a click 1,000 times. And I think we got the song in like the first or second take.
And then when I listened to it, I'm like, well, now it sounds like fucking chorus is slowing down. It's okay to speed up a little, isn't it? I remember every night we'd bring a cassette back from Sound City to the Oakwood apartments where we were staying and listen to what we had done that day. Those imperfections, that's cool. And it makes it sound like people. And Kurt was entirely about performance. To us, it was most important that there was an honesty and truth to what we were doing.
The music came through the speakers in a way that was primal. You could hear the sweat in the tracks. You could hear Kurt's vocal cords. Looking back at Sound City, I realized so much of that record is about performance. When we tried to record something on the way, the band tried to record it live in the big tracking room, and it was just too kind of big and bombastic sounding.
That song had to be right because it was such a delicate, fragile composition.
Underneath the bridge, top is sprung a leak.
Kurt came into the control room and he started playing the song. He laid in front of the Neve on this couch, and I turned off the fans and the phones and everything, and he played the song just barely mumbling, barely singing, and barely playing that 5-string guitar.
You had to focus on making it correct in the way it should be, which isn't necessarily perfect. It just feels right.
That was was when I first saw a computer used with music, because it was so hard to play to that guitar.
I couldn't really figure out how to get the performances locked together without trying to do crazy edits with them. Somebody had told me about this new digital machine.
So this technician brought in a computer and a screen, and it was basically like Pro Tools or something.
It was archaic. It was incredibly slow. You can't do what you can these days in Pro Tools. You hit this render button, and it would take like 2 hours.
We used to call it Slow Tools, because it just used to slow everything down.
And then when you finally listened to it, if you didn't like it, you had to hit undo and then try another one and hit render again. It would take like another 2 hours.
The computer was such a pain in the butt. It's just like, this is a gimmicky thing. Good thing we have tape. This will never take off.
When I hear Smells Like Teen Spirit on the radio, I remember those really simple moments of being in the studio. And those 15 days or 16 days, whatever it was, that board, totally changed my life.
Sound City would not have survived if it was not for that record, you know.
Nobody had ever heard of Nirvana, and it went right up to #1. We knew right after that we did a lot of business. It was like Fleetwood Mac all over again.
Joe was always really good to me. There was a plaque that he had brought over to me when Nevermind hit #1. And we hung it on the wall, and it was just a couple weeks later that Joe actually passed away.
He was absolutely a beautiful person, Joe. Absolutely a doll of a guy. And I didn't treat him very well. After, you know, with the separation. And so I'm really glad we made up, you know, before he died.
It was a sad day. He helped a lot of people do a lot of things in their career.
I remember coming back to Sound City. I hadn't been there in a while, and the record had gotten big, and they sent them a platinum record. I remember opening the door and seeing that, and it was such a huge moment for me. I was just like, because I remembered walking in there for the first time and seeing all of those other records. To me, Sound City represents some sort of integrity, like a truth, which is very human. Actual people doing this thing that inspired millions and millions of fans all over the place to do the same thing. You know?
That September, phones just blew up. I mean, you come in the morning, there'd be like 15 messages.
It's like this tidal wave of interest, and it was a no-brainer, Sound City.
We chose Sound City because Nevermind was recorded there.
I had never been in the studio before. There was a lot of time spent like cutting a tape at an angle and taping it together. It just to me seemed crazy, like that didn't make any sense to me. We did our record at Sound City, like a live show.
We brought monitors in, and we invited a bunch of our friends down. I think we got half the record in that one night.
Things got a lot more raw and down to earth again.
Had started to get into simplification and analog tape and vintage equipment and that kind of thing. And so obviously all roads led to a place like Sound City. It became the center of my life.